Everyone. I'm Allison Billings, Executive Director of Impact on Education, the foundation supporting the Boulder Valley School District. And since 1983, we have been the district support system, providing supplemental funding and resources to all 31,000 students and 4,000 educators to expand what's possible and promote equity in public education. Our ultimate goal is about giving every child a relevant education that sets them up for success. This year, we've been really busy providing home internet to all students across the district, helping the district provide over 2 million meals to students, supporting childcare scholarships for times when we were not able to have school in person, and providing supplemental instruction for students whose learning has been disrupted. But that's not really what we're here to talk about today. Instead, I'm really pleased to welcome you to our video series called What I Know Now. And I'm really proud to introduce you to a member of our student advisory board who will interview today's special guest, Yancey Spruill, CEO of DigitalOcean. So Noah, who is about to graduate, talking about setting students up for success, I will hand it over to you so you can introduce yourself and take it away from here.
All right, thank you, Allison. Well, my name is Noah Mallerstoon. I'm a senior at Boulder High School, and I'll be graduating in just a few days. I've been on the Impact on Education Student Advisory for 3 years now, and it's been a really great experience, so thank you. And thank you, Yancey, for joining us. Yancey is the CEO at DigitalOcean, a cloud computing and hosting company. He has a long history of working in the tech industry. So,
thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. So I'm gonna get us started with some intro questions. And the first one is, what's something you learned or were taught in school that you thought you'd never use, but you actually regularly use now in your life?
English, it relates to high school. I think the one class that I just didn't think was statistics in college. You know, we've all learned in this pandemic the last year how little people understand statistics. And I think it cost the economy trillions of dollars in wasted decision making. But you know, I think that's really important for everybody to understand that level of statistical analysis that helps you make decisions on risk, which is really important as you, and by the way, Noah, congratulations. I'm very jealous you're graduating from high school. I graduated from high school in 1985.
Thank you.
So I'm on the other side of all this conversation. But you know, I think statistics is one that I took in college, and I just, you know, it's so relevant in so many issues, and I wasn't a major in any of it, but just getting awareness of it and the basic frameworks, you know, I still use it today to think about risk in general in my work life, personal life, the macro world we live in. The other one that's interesting is in business school, I have an MBA from Dartmouth. I have an undergraduate degree from Georgia Tech, electrical engineering degree. Is sort of what they call HR. They used to call it human resources and personnel. Now they just call it people. But it's the organization that's, and the issues focus on people management. And you know, it's interesting. Certainly now in my job, I don't actually do any work anymore. I don't code. I don't write software. I don't do any financial projections, etc. I just help the team figure out what we need to do, and they do it. But my job is all people now. And one of the things that everyone underestimates early in their career is, because you're so focused on learning skills, and those are usually hard skills, technical skills, math, accounting, even if it's literature or learning something that you actually could say I'm an expert in, that they don't focus on the fact that to move through life, both personally and professionally, you actually have to be a very good people person. You have to read the room. You have to know how to engage with people, both on the individual level and a group level. And so so many people underestimate that early. And, when you go to reunions from high school in 20, 30 years, and you're talking about your careers, I guarantee you're more likely talking about the people issues than you are, how good your financial model is, or how good your coding skills are, or how good your papers are that you write. It's going to be much more about how you navigate humanity from a career perspective. So that's something that I learned, I found was interesting, and nobody liked it when we were in business school. And now when we go to reunions, or I talk to any alums, or I talk to, anybody, I've been lucky to talk to some really, sort of legendary CEOs, and the conversations they're always about culture and people, and how do you get more out of your people, especially now with this pandemic, and, every CEO is trying to figure out how do we get out of this. And it's all the people side of it. So that's something that, surprised me. I didn't think about, especially me being an engineer and always really into math, and really sort of got my way into the world. The professional world was about math. And here I am on the opposite side of that, the class that I think is most helpful to me today.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you. Yeah, I'm the same way, really. I mean, I love math and science and engineering, and I'm kind of an introvert, so I don't spend a lot of time talking to people. But yeah, I can see how that would be important later in life. So, so those are my favorite subjects, are math and science. Were you the same? What were your favorite subjects when were you a student? And then what interests you now?
Yeah. I've always been very interested in politics, political science, and history and economics. I just, I grew up, I remember one of the first news I remember watching was the Watergate hearings with President Nixon, who I know people might find it hard to believe somebody was not liked more than the last president, but he's a candidate in my lifetime. There actually was somebody that was liked less probably than the last president. But anyway, that just really stoked my interest in, history and politics and how the government worked. And, I grew up in Buffalo, New York. I actually originally from Chicago, but we moved to Buffalo. And, growing up in Buffalo is now known as part of the Rust Belt, that part of the industrial U.S. that rode up the U.S. economy during the Industrial Revolution from the mid 1800s until really 1970s. Well, I grew up in the 70s as the Rust was forming, and it just fascinated me to understand, all the inflation we had in our economy. Ironically, they're talking about inflation today, and just why our economy, it was just so uncertain and scary. We were very poor. And just understanding all that, putting it all together. So economics, and then, that changed in the 80s with different policies, both politically and economically. And, we had a different economy in the 80s and 90s, and, really until recently. So I would say those were my favorite. It was interesting. I didn't pursue that in college because I looked at, we didn't have any money. And I was looking at starting salaries for folks graduating with liberal arts degrees like economics or politics, political science. And at the time, it was $15,000, $16,000 a year. And I was like, well, that's not, I didn't know, it seemed like a lot of money, but then I looked at these engineers at the time were making $32,000, $33,000 a year. And I got my dog and my wife just returned, so it's going to be a little noisy. But I looked at those engineers starting at $32,000, $33,000. I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And I was very good at math. I always sort of related to the economics and all the rest of it. I used to read the papers, which I know sound funny now, and look at all the sports scores. I knew all the stats, and I knew all the math. I'd look at stock price quotes for all the PE rate. I looked at all this math. So I was really, and I went to an engineering prep school in Buffalo and so that was my ticket, out of a bad situation. So I didn't actually pursue the liberal arts side of it, but, I was good at math, but I think my passion, and I finally caught up with me after graduating from Georgia Tech. And, I had this company that I loved working at, Corning, I was an engineer doing cool stuff in this optical fiber plant, which, optical fibers in the late 80s, everyone, the world there was no internet. Everyone wondered what you were doing working. And I loved the company. I loved what I was doing, but I just had a bigger passion around economics and finance. And so that's why I went to business school and ultimately to Wall Street. So I did ultimately pursue those passions around economics and politics and finance, but through a little bit of a roundabout to get myself out of Buffalo, into Georgia Tech. And I did make that salary my first year. Ironically, I'm sure the students won't want to hear this, but this is the compounding impact of inflation. My 4 years at Georgia Tech as an out-of-state student were about $32,000 to get an electrical engineering degree. And it's a public school. The out-of-state now at Georgia Tech, I think it's 6 or 7 times that. So anyway, there's some more numbers.
Crazy. Yeah, it's interesting to hear how your interests and your passions kind of evolved. Who knows, maybe I'll end up pursuing something completely different as well.
We all get our 80, 90 years to figure it out, right? So I think there's always this pressure to get it right at 18 or 16. What college you going to? What's your major? And the reality is the big thing with being, is always learning. And, do no harm professionally or personally. And, as long as you're learning and growing and have an open mind, and when the facts become changed to you about what your passions are, other interests, then I think in the last 30 years in the U.S. economy, it's really been demonstrated that there's so much flexibility around career. I was a career changer twice. I was an engineer and I went to Wall Street, which was almost impossible. Nobody did it, but you want something and you can get anything done. And then I was a career changer again to go from Wall Street to, out here in Colorado and be a work in technology. So it's absolutely possible. The key is just always keep learning and growing. And, if you want something, I've learned in life, you can pretty much get it. But you got to work for it, and you got to want it. And passion is, as important as smarts, and hard work is, in some ways, more important than smarts.
That's good to know.
That in schools, but take a lot of C+ students who work harder than everyone else, A students who are coasting.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see. COVID-19 has clearly had a huge impact on the way students are learning this year. Some changes we all hope are temporary, but some may be lasting. What innovations to public schools and student learning do you hope this pandemic brings?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about schools. Schools are built around a physical location and, the anti-social distancing. And so I think the big change everyone has to make is the hybrid construct. So I don't know where schools will go, whether they'll force everyone back because I just think they want to be back in the school, or whether they'll take the opportunity and the key learning from this last year to say hybrid actually works, and give people some optionality so that if they're coughing one day, they don't have to miss school. They can just Zoom in, you can get a lot more productivity. I mean, our companies everywhere are really struggling, and there was a great article or a blog written by somebody from Boulder about, CEOs have to get their heads around, it's not about them, right? It's about your people. And if your people are more productive and they don't have a commute to Denver, or, in my case in New York, people come in and out of the office, it's 90 minutes each way because it's very expensive in New York City to live where our office is. So they commute, and a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, just assumed a commute. That's why we have suburbs now. People could drive and take a train, and they just did it because they wanted a nice quality of life on the weekends or late at night, but they assumed the cost would be a dent in their personal life, and it doesn't have to happen that way. And I think for schools, take this opportunity to, if someone, you know, you didn't think about it, somebody was coughing or sneezing next to you and you didn't like it, but, you know, to have, you know, a lot of people didn't want to miss school. I never missed school. I liked school. And, you know, why have to miss a day, which you never really make up, when you could just zoom in. And so I think getting really good technology wise at hybrid, so that some, you know, some kids some days are, you know, in school because they should be. Other times, you know, a lot of times you have a doctor's appointment, which is an hour, but you just miss a day of school or half a day, and you really only should miss, you know, 90 minutes. And the schools had little flexibility. So I think they have to take the learnings that this worked, and not take, you know, all the gray hairs like me whose baggage is, well, we didn't learn this way, so they can't possibly. And the answer is that absolutely. You know, it wasn't the old world where there wasn't technology. You had to be physically in the room. Well, we now know technology doesn't require us to be in the room, and there is a cost to rubbing elbows, and, you know, it's hard to do a chalkboard, literally. If they even have chalkboards in school now, not just whiteboards, but it's hard to do that interactive learning. You don't stop and talk on the way to class. You lose that, there's no question, but there's other ways to recreate that. And you don't need that all day, every day. It actually is a big drain in terms of lost time, etc. And there's ways to do it. You don't have to do it every day of the week. Maybe you do it one day of the week. But I think this hybrid is a way to be more efficient, both in terms of delivering education. I also think in terms of minimizing the role of just, we have a normal life outside of school or work, that when you try to do a hybrid and you lock something into a location, it makes the logistics hard. Doctor's appointments, after school events, you know, nipples, all of that. So you have a funeral, you got to attend somebody's funeral or something like that, or you have a long weekend because it's your grandmother's 90th birthday. You know, you want to get there on Thursday or Friday. You got to miss 2 days of school, or no, you can, you know, zoom in and you don't miss anything, and you could celebrate your grand. So I just think there's a better understanding of the integration of our lives, and technology enables that. And some people think that's a bad thing, but if it reduces friction and allows you still to get the same benefits, and you can then think about recreating physical interactions maybe less frequently and still get the benefit of that. I think the schools and the unions and the leadership and the administration of these schools really need to be an open view, and not just say, we've had this year, it's gone, and let's wait, you know, the next people deal with the next pandemic in 100 years. I think there's very real learnings here, because we have technology that they didn't have in 1919, that we can actually make our lives better, the learning better. I know we will have a better company as a result of this pandemic. I know it's bad to say that, but we will. We had a highly remote workforce, and we were hybrid, but we weren't very good at it a year ago. And we're now going to be really, really good at it because of the learnings we have. And I just hope the schools and the governments who run this public schools can be flexible to evolve, and not just go back to how the laws, you know, evolve the laws or the regulations if they have to, evolve the union contracts, but don't make this be a lost opportunity. We've learned a lot. 7 billion people change immediately for a year or two. You know, we're not done yet, frankly. It's a little better here than it is. Even in Colorado, going back to New York, it's a lot better here than it is in New York, or, you know, good friends in California. We're way ahead. It's not, so all the states we all locked down in March of last year, and all 7-8 billion people on the planet went, you know, to the house. And it's going to take a couple of years to unwind, where everybody can get back to the new sense of normalcy. But I hope in the interim and for the long haul, they don't. This would be a massive missed opportunity not to accept that the world has changed because of technology, and that could be a positive thing. You don't need to go back to the old world. if you will.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I do hope that we'll be back in person next year, but I think it would be great if this technology stuck around and we could use it occasionally when we need to. It makes a lot of sense. Let's see. As students, we have found that some students are marginalized in our school, and we want to do something to make a difference. What's your advice for how we as students can make a positive change?
When you say marginalized, what do you mean by marginalized?
I mean, some students tend to have less opportunities in our school. They don't get the same kind of support that other students do. Something I see like in AP classes, it's not a very diverse group. It's kind of two different types of students in advanced and normal classes.
Yeah, well, and how I got involved with Impact was this issue. I mean, education transformed my life. So I have a lot of passion about it. It's a tough issue because for a lot of, it's a very complex issue as well. I think people try to simplify ethnicity, race, economics to a very simple set of bullet points, and it's not as easy as that. But having said that, I think again, technology, organizations like Impact or even students can help with raising money to help other people get access to technology, raise money so that other students, instead of we should have fun. They do all these fundraisers for schools, to build buildings. Well, maybe we don't need more buildings. Maybe we need more, shared infrastructure with, the students in the school. Maybe we should do fundraisers for that. But I think, when I got involved to hear that, I think it was 10% of the students. My daughter is at Sunset Middle, and 10% of the students weren't coming to school. My kids, didn't, on Friday they were in class, and the Monday last year they had to go remote. Well, they all have a desk. We have, two different broadband. We have two different Wi-Fi so that we can consume different, not all fight for the same Wi-Fi line. They all have Macs, right? They have, they have the tools, and, that didn't used to be the case. That's one thing where, 20, 30 years ago, everybody had to go to class. It was normalized in that sense. And, the difference was, when I was a kid, I didn't have encyclopedias. So we had kids who had encyclopedias, which were books that were printed once a year with information you could have in your house. Seems silly now to think about it, but they were really expensive. So I had to go to the library to do research where other people had. So it was an advantage, but it wasn't, as big a deal as if you don't have broadband now, and, the world is where we just went to or where we are. I mean, that's a big deal. So I think the schools are going to have to be very thoughtful, and the government policy, it's going to have to be very thoughtful about, we all have to have electricity in our homes. Should everybody have broadband? And, I used to work for Corning, who was at the front end of this. I was on the board of Zayo, a local company who wires the world for information. But I think information is as much a utility as gas, electricity. And I think that's got to be addressed as a policy matter, because you can see when there isn't equal access to that, that's a much different disadvantage than me getting on the bus in Buffalo, going down to the public library in downtown and just doing the work versus just cut out from the economy. So I think that's technology is a friend and a foe because it costs money, etc. And you have to understand how to use it. I think the other thing is, and I come from a different generation on this, but there wasn't anybody like me doing these sorts of things when I was in high school. And so you didn't meet any black CEOs. Like if you weren't an entertainer or, music or athlete, or, in my neighborhood, if you weren't dealing drugs or worse, that was the role models. Right now, you got the whole economy is, there's so much deeper penetration. It may not be in certain communities because, people got to work out of it, but there is an aspect of, I want something, I have to go get it. And I think the message is, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, when I was on the other side of this, well, there was no Zoom, but, this kind of dynamic, you had to have a lot of faith that the American dream existed, because there were no role models for going to Georgia Tech, getting an engineering degree, go and work, going to business school, doing this, going and saying, I'm going to be a CEO. And, people used to joke about there'll never be a black president. That was a joke. That wasn't everybody believed it, and it didn't. And so now you have so many, it's so much penetration in the economy. It's not what it should be. It's not equal. It's not proportionate, but it's there. And people need to look at that and say, that is really possible. When I left Buffalo in 1985, there was no context for it. It was like, this kid is crazy. So I think people need to understand that you got to work hard. You got to work harder. And you can always have the debate, is it fair? No, it's not fair, but it is what it is. And again, these issues around race and class, they're very complex issues. And to get so caught up in we had a conversation in the company the other day about this in a certain thing of what role we were playing, and they wanted me tweeting all this stuff. I was like, we went public at $5 billion. And we raised $50 million for our company to do things to help the world be a better place. We call it Holly's Hub for Good. And I said, why you're focusing on this? Why don't we focus on what we can do? And I think the same thing in education. If you're on the wrong side of, I have no family members who went to college. You're on the wrong side of, we're check to check and we're, a week away from being homeless. And if we're in the wrong side of, I'm in a neighborhood where my role models aren't going to college and they're encouraging me not to study and go take a short-term view of how to make some money. And, having been there in that situation, you kind of have to have faith that if you keep your nose clean and work hard, and it will work out. And I think the thing, the biggest change that I can look at in, my life is you had to have faith in that in 1985. It's not a stretch today to say I can go to college and be an engineer. I can be a doctor. I can be somebody who goes and figures out the next coronavirus. I could do, there's unlimited potential for everybody in the US, and it's harder for some than others. There's no question. And I suspect in 200, it's a lot easier today than it was 200 years ago, or 100 years ago, or 50 years ago. And, I can speak to the last 50. It's hard, but, it's doable. And there's things happening in this world today that I wouldn't have dreamed of. And I'm sure it'll still be harder for some than others in 50 years from now, 100 years from now, but you can control what you can control. And there's plenty of proof points out there today. I'm one of them, but there's plenty. I'm not one of zero, one of one. There's one of so many. And, people need to look at that. And, you could focus on when's fair and not fair and do your best and try to be a good person about that. And hopefully you get on the other side of it. You can impact it with your own experience and helping other folks. But that to me is really important for people, is you can control your own destiny. And I know the politics in the US right now are awful, and it's so dark how people talk about. The reality is a lot different on the ground. And people are pulling themselves up and taking a helping hand, and it takes all that, and working really hard and driving completely different outcomes. And that's why so many people want to come to this country still, because the opportunities that we have here don't exist in most places around the planet. And
Awesome.
Not perfect.
No,
But
not at all. But I think that point about, representation matters, right? So I think I'm really glad that Noah was able to meet you, Yancey, and that everybody who's watching this video is able to learn from your experiences, because I agree. I think that, representation makes a big difference. Being able to see yourself in positions like you are, leading massive companies and doing great work that we all use every day. So appreciate you taking the time to do it, but I want to be respectful of your time because we're just a couple minutes past 4:30. Noah, any final thoughts or anything you want to share with Yancey or any burning
question? How about one last question?
Okay, Noah, do you have one more question you'd like to ask?
Well, I'll make it short. I'm going into computer science, and I'm just interested to learn a little bit more about what you guys do at DigitalOcean. Can you give me just a quick summary?
Yeah, so we're what's commonly known as cloud computing, which means we have 26,000+ computers spread across 14 different data centers. And what we enable, we're focused on, people who are just testing code. A lot of students just test code on our environment. And people who run businesses on our environment. Some of them run education businesses where people are going remote school. And so instead of, 20, 30 years ago, if you wanted to start a business that was digital, you had to buy your own servers, you had to buy your own storage, you had to buy your own network switches, you had to buy access to the internet, you had to cool it, and you could be spending tens of thousands of dollars just to have the IT gear, plus you had to have an employee usually running it. Now, in the time we've been here on the Zoom, you could be up and running coding on our platform for as little as $5 a month. And so what we unleash is entrepreneurs and software developers all over the world to come and test an idea and build a business. And we have over 600,000 customers all over the world, 185 countries. 70% of our customers are not in the U.S. So, so we enable them to write software that they can build a website to do e-commerce, or host a media application, a gaming application, an education, host a blog, sell ads, sell software applications. And, we enable entrepreneurs. And, one of the things I'm really proud of is, a business like ours didn't exist 20 years ago. And if this pandemic happened 20 years ago, that'd be probably 600,000 people who are not able to be self-sufficient and go chase a dream. So I think, again, like we've been talking about, technology enables human productivity in ways that, are outflanking some of the issues in our world. And it's broadening the net of people who can participate in the economy because it levels the barriers, lowers the barriers to raising money. Think about, you might have needed $100,000 to start a software company that now you only need $5 a month. Everybody can find $5 a month. They can't find hundreds of thousands of dollars. That takes networks and access to capital. So we kind of decimate the barriers to entry to start a business and allow people to reach potential all over the world. And, I think, it's a great business. So we're just went public a month ago and founded just a little over 10 years ago. And we feel like we're just getting started. Got a big opportunity ahead of us, and got a lot of cash in the bank now, and we're going after it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Yancey.
Sounds like Noah might be a future customer, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Go to DigitalOcean.com. Get set up very quickly.
All right.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for taking the time. I appreciate it, and appreciate the work you did, Noah, to prepare and ask some great questions. I feel like I learned a lot more about you, Yancey, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear more about your story and what led you to where you are and the cool stuff that you're doing today. So thank you.
Well, thank you for doing what you're doing to help people get through this and take down some of the barriers of dollars to allow them to be good students and hopefully reach their potential, which is why I've gotten involved with you. And I'm excited to do this and always happy to talk about how people can reach their potential. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And you all have a good evening, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Thank you. Well, and we probably have to say a quick congrats to you, Noah. Noah's, congratulations. You have worked hard. This has not been an easy year to be a high school student either. And we're really excited for you in your next chapter. So congratulations.
Yeah, I'm happy with how things have played out for me, but it's the unknowns of going out there and going after it are so cool. I know they're stressful for you and the others listening here who are just going out from the home to chase their dreams, but it's so cool to figure it out.
Thank you both. Yeah.
All right.
Good luck.